think it's something that we don't discuss, not only in our church, but in the world near enough. That we spend a lot of time, even in church, we'll pray over people's physical needs, cancer, diabetes, heart issues, whatever it is, and that's good, and we should do that. But we need to be able to talk openly about depression, about anxiety. There are many people that are struggling with that issue, and nobody knows about it. I grew up in the church, became a Christian at a young age, went to youth camp here at the church. It wasn't called the camp then. Definitely was a Christian. I got to high school, and my faith began to waver a bit. I began to get involved in things that were not God-honoring, and I would have a lot of shame, a lot of guilt, and I would then be down, and then I would get back and feel close to God, and then I would feel down, and so it had this skewed relationship with God. And so I say that just as background leading into the rest of my life. And so I wasn't mired down in any horrific sin. I was raising my kids here in the church. I was the guy that would sit on the back row of the class, never really say anything. Maybe make it for one service, maybe make it to Sunday school, maybe make it to church. And what happens when you do that is when you try and shoehorn God into your schedule, you dilute God and His purposes for your life. And so that was what happened in my life, because I had this view of God that because of the sin in my life, early in life, that He was not happy with me. I had asked for forgiveness. I believe He had forgiven me, but I hadn't forgiven myself for some of the sin in my life. And that was causing a lot of the internal pain that I think was leading to the physical pain in my life, and ultimately into the depression that I'd never felt before, I'd never had. And I sank into a deep, deep, deep depression. Such that it was the type of depression where you couldn't get up, even in mornings, certain days, that I would stand up there at my bathroom to brush my teeth, and I couldn't even figure out what toothpaste to use. That's how debilitating depression can be. I was at a Bible study one day, and I began seeing a guy that was teaching there. His name's Dr. George Burris, and I began to see him professionally, and he began to help me. And so one day I was there in the office, and Dr. Burris said, "Mike," when we were talking about this particular issue, this particular sin in my life that I had never dealt with, he said, "Do you know how much God loves you?" And I said, "Yeah, I know how much God loves me." And he said, "No, Mike, do you know how much God loves you?" And I said, yeah, okay, I get it. I know. God is love, right? I've been taught that my whole life. And he just kept saying it over and over and over and over, how much God loved me. And I sat there, and all of a sudden, I began to cry and sob from the depths of my being. And I kept wanting to talk, and Dr. Burris kept saying, "Mike, I don't want you to say anything. I just want you to allow God to come to you and say what He wants to say and do what He wants to do." And folks, for the first time in my life, I felt God's presence, real. Not an audible voice, but I felt Him. And I know that He was with me, and at that point, I felt Him truly forgive me. And He said, "I need you to forgive yourself." And so I did. And I remember leaving there that day that I had a sense of hope now that my depression was going to be alleviated. It wasn't overnight, because when you're in depression, you're on one side of a mountain and you can't see the other side. If they lose hope, they lose it all. And we have to give them hope. And hope, I believe, ultimately only comes through Jesus Christ.